Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a deeply troubling and urgent situation unfolding in Sudan, where more than 36,000 people have fled their homes amid the escalating clashes between the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, and the Sudanese Armed Forces, also known as SAF. This is one of the most severe escalations since the civil conflict began, and it shows no sign of slowing down. The fighting, which once concentrated in Darfur and Khartoum, has now spread into the Kordofan region, forcing thousands to seek safety in already overcrowded and under-resourced camps. To understand why this is happening, we need to go back to how this conflict began. In April 2023, tensions between Sudan's two most powerful military factions exploded into open warfare. On one side is the Sudanese Armed Forces, the official military led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. On the other side is the Rapid Support Forces, a powerful paramilitary group led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, widely known as Hemedti. The RSF evolved from the Janjaweed militias, which were accused of carrying out atrocities in Darfur during the early 2000s. What began as a struggle for control of the government and the country's resources has now become a nationwide humanitarian nightmare. Entire towns have been destroyed, essential services have collapsed, and millions are now displaced across Sudan and neighboring countries. The international community has repeatedly called for a ceasefire, but every attempt so far has failed. Recently, the city of Fasher in North Darfur fell to the RSF after a prolonged siege. Fasher was one of the last major cities under army control in Darfur, and its fall marked a major turning point in the conflict. Reports from survivors describe horrific scenes, mass killings, sexual violence, and bodies left unburied in the streets. The city has been devastated, and many residents who survived the siege are now fleeing toward neighboring regions like North Kordofan, hoping for safety. Within just 1 week, over 36,000 people fled from 5 localities in North Kordofan. Families walked for days without food or water, carrying only what they could hold. Many of them arrived in Tawila, a camp that already shelters more than 600,000 displaced people. The sudden influx has pushed the camp to its breaking point. There are severe shortages of food, medicine, and shelter, and diseases are spreading rapidly. El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan, has become the new focus of fighting. Both the RSF and the army are racing to control it because of its strategic importance. The city lies along major supply routes connecting Darfur to central Sudan and the capital, Khartoum. Whoever controls El Obeid can control movement between the western and central parts of the country, but for the people who live there, this strategic importance has become a curse. Markets are closed, roads are blocked, and ordinary civilians are trapped between advancing troops and airstrikes. Those who have managed to flee describe the journey as nightmarish. Villages are being emptied, homes looted. She'd find out one day. Some have been forced to pay bribes or ransoms to cross RSF-controlled areas. Others have been separated from their families during the chaos. Parents have lost children, and many are wandering in search of missing relatives. At the heart of this tragedy is a humanitarian disaster that continues to deepen. Aid organizations say they cannot keep up with the rising needs. Access to conflict zones is severely restricted, and many aid convoys have been looted or blocked. Hospitals have been destroyed, doctors have fled, and medical supplies are almost non-existent. People are dying not just from bullets or bombings, but from hunger, dehydration, and preventable diseases. The United Nations has warned that famine is imminent in several regions of Sudan. Some areas in South Kordofan and Darfur have already been classified as facing famine conditions. Malnutrition among children has reached catastrophic levels. Without urgent intervention, thousands more could die in the coming months. The reports of human rights abuses are equally horrifying. The International Criminal Court has received evidence suggesting that war crimes and crimes against humanity may have been committed, especially in Fasher. Witnesses have described systematic killings of civilians, targeted assaults on ethnic groups, and widespread sexual violence. The ICC prosecutor has already warned that those responsible will face accountability, but for those suffering on the ground, justice still feels far away. What makes this conflict so devastating is its complexity. It's not just a fight between two military leaders. It's a struggle fueled by deep political divisions, economic collapse, ethnic tensions, and external influences. Both the RSF and SAF receive support from different foreign actors, which complicates efforts for peace. Meanwhile, ordinary Sudanese citizens find themselves caught in the middle, powerless and unprotected. The fighting has now spread far beyond Darfur, reaching into regions that were once relatively stable. North Kordofan, for instance, is now the next major battleground. As the RSF advances, the Sudanese army is digging in for defense, and the civilian population is once again trapped. The fear of massacres like those seen in Darfur looms large. People are terrified that history is repeating itself, with the same forces responsible for atrocities 2 decades ago now wreaking havoc once again. Beyond Sudan's borders, the consequences are already being felt. Neighboring countries like Chad, South Sudan, and Egypt are seeing new waves of refugees arriving daily. These countries are already struggling with their own economic challenges, and the influx of displaced people is putting immense strain on their resources. The regional stability of the Horn of Africa is at risk, and the potential for the conflict to spill over into neighboring territories is growing. The collapse of governance in Sudan has also created space for criminal networks and extremist groups to operate. Arms smuggling, human trafficking, and illicit trade are thriving in the chaos. With the state unable to enforce law and order, armed groups and militias are carving out their own territories. This fragmentation makes peace negotiations even harder, as there are now multiple factions with competing interests. On the international stage, the response has been limited. Some sanctions have been imposed, and humanitarian aid is being mobilized, but the scale of the crisis is overwhelming. Diplomats are calling for new peace talks, yet neither side seems willing to compromise. Both the RSF and the army believe they can still win militarily, even though that victory would come at a devastating cost for the people of Sudan. The tragedy of Sudan is not just in the violence itself, but in the world's slow reaction. The media coverage is limited, and many outside Africa are unaware of the scale of suffering. Millions are displaced, entire cities are destroyed, and famine looms, yet global attention remains focused elsewhere. This silence allows atrocities to continue unchecked, and it sends a dangerous message that such crises can unfold without meaningful intervention. What's happening in Sudan is a reminder of how fragile peace can be when power is concentrated in the hands of armed groups. It's also a reflection of how quickly a political dispute can turn into a humanitarian catastrophe when governance collapses. The Sudanese people have endured years of economic hardship, military coups, and political betrayals. Now, they are facing one of the world's worst crises in recent history. For those displaced, survival is now a daily struggle. In the camps, People share stories of loss and resilience. Children play in the dirt while their parents worry about where the next meal will come from. Aid workers describe heartbreaking scenes: mothers collapsing from hunger, families sleeping in open fields, and entire communities without access to clean water. Diseases like cholera and malaria are spreading, and without proper sanitation, conditions could worsen rapidly. The situation calls for urgent international attention and coordinated action. Humanitarian corridors need to be opened to allow safe passage for civilians and aid convoys. Both warring parties must be pressured to cease hostilities and respect human rights. Support the effort con to hold PERPETR con TORS zonus a CCOUNT a BLE through all. IFES LIFE international law. Without accountability, cycles of violence will continue. It's also important to recognize the resilience of the Sudanese people. Despite unimaginable suffering, communities are organizing themselves to survive. Local volunteers and civil society groups are providing food, shelter, and medical help even with limited resources. Their courage and determination deserve recognition and support. Looking ahead, the path to peace in Sudan will be long and complex. The country needs a political solution that addresses the root causes of the conflict: inequality, marginalization, and the unchecked power of military elites. It also needs massive international assistance to rebuild infrastructure, revive the economy, and heal the wounds of war. But none of this will be possible unless the fighting stops. The displacement of 36,000 people in a matter of days is just the latest chapter in a much larger tragedy. Millions more are at risk, and unless decisive action is taken, Sudan could face a humanitarian collapse of historic proportions. The voices of those suffering need to be heard, and the world cannot afford to look away. For now, all we can do is continue to raise awareness, support humanitarian aid, and push for accountability. Every life lost is one too many, and every displaced person is a reminder of how urgently peace is needed. The story of Sudan is not just about war. It's about people, families, children, and communities whose only wish is to live in safety and dignity. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to understand this important issue. Please share this video to help others learn about what's happening in Sudan. Subscribe for more updates on global conflicts and humanitarian stories that deserve attention. Together, awareness can be the first step toward change. Stay informed, stay compassionate, and I'll see you in the next video.